You are an idiot. Shina and Yonda were sitting in Shina's room. Shina was currently sitting on her bed, while Yonda stared her down with her arms crossed. I thought she was a threat. Shina defended herself, giving Yonda a pleading look. Yes, I get why you did it. But the way you went about it was utterly stupid. Yonda scolded her. If the girl was just waiting for any chance to hurt father, she would have done it, long before we got the chance to stop her. Meaning she either didn't mean any harm, at least not yet, or she was waiting for a good chance to kill father in an isolated place. Meaning the best course of action was just to keep an eye on her, and make sure she's never alone with father, or anyone to be safe. Had things gone poorly, she could have killed you, claimed it was an accident, and we'd be back where we started, just with you dead. I wouldn't have lost. Shina thought with a pout. I'm strong. Yeah, and so is she. I don't know much about combat, but I do know that it's not a simple matter. Get overconfident, or make a mistake, and that could be your death. Yonda pointed out. She wasn't trying to kill me. I know what it looks like when someone tries to kill you. Shina pointed out, recalling the way Nise had fought her. But you didn't know that when you went in, did you? Yonda asked her. No. Shina pouted guiltily. Ugh, that being said, I can't say that this wasn't useful. We did get some rather useful information from this fight. Yonda conceded. Doesn't make what you did any less stupid, but at the very least we can call you a useful idiot instead a regular idiot. Why are you so mean? Shina asked, tears in the corner of her eyes. Because I have to hear every complaint, whine, cry and depraved and depressing thought that goes through everyone's heads, so excuse me if I'm in a bad mood. Yonda explained, completely unsympathetic towards the younger girl's plight. But also because you've made the job of getting everyone else to trust you much, much harder. Now Shina was actually crying. This scolding was somehow worse than the one Izuku had given her. This was a mistake. I wish I never attacked that girl. Good. Yonda sighed. But, I suppose I've scolded you enough. We have work to do. I've already told the others that the fight was a misunderstanding, but let's just say it didn't do you any favors. So now we really need to find a way for you to stand out and get people to like you. Yonda then pulled out a pack of tissues and threw it at Shina. Now dry those tears, we have work to do. Were you planning on making me cry? Shina asked as she looked down at the tissue. Yup. Now move. Yonda ordered. We have a busy day ahead of us. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda took Shina to the kitchen, where she had laid out 2 pieces of bread and a slice of cheese. Now, cooking is a very good way to get people to like you. Fuku is a great example of that. Pretty much everyone likes her by now, despite her hiding from half the people here. Yonda explained. So first, we're going to start with something simple. We have an American guest, let's see if we can surprise her with a grilled cheese sandwich. I don't know, I've never cooked anything before. Shina pointed out, nervously twiddling her thumbs. It's not that hard. I'm sure you can manage something so simple. Yonda scoffed. XXXXXXXXXXX. A few minutes later, Shina and Yonda were looking down at the counter at the result of Shina's work. A plate with what looked like a lump of charcoal. How? Was all Yonda asked. How did you manage to mess it up this badly? And why is the cheese still here? Oh, right, the cheese. Shina looked down at the cheese she forgot to put between the bread. I knew was forgetting something. Yonda face-bombed. Alright, I have many things I want to say to you right now, but I know if I make you cry again it's going to waste more time. So let's try something, even simpler. The psychic girl went over to the pantry and pulled out a cup of cup ramen. This should be impossible to mess up. All you have to do is follow the directions of the cup. XXXXXXXXXXXX. A few minutes later, Shina and Yonda were staring at the counter, which had a flaming cup of ramen on it. Shina cringed and waited for the mental tongue lashing she was sure to receive. But it never came. Yonda was simply too stunned to think. Instead, she walked over to the wall and slammed her head into it a couple of times. Sorry, I just needed to hurt myself to take my mind off, whatever this was. Yonda explained as she turned to Shina, showing the bruise on her head. I'm pretty that's not good. Shina replied. Neither is your cooking. Yonda shouted, giving Shina a headache as she screamed the words into her head. While Shina cowered in fear, Yonda took a second to calm herself down. Okay. Yonda said after taking a minute. Clearly, you are not good at cooking. Let's try something else, shall we? Before I lose what's left of my sanity. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Shina and Yonda were now in the training room, or rather looking into the training room from the doorway. The training room currently had puddles of blood and piles of organs lying around, which Shina was looking at with disgust. Okay, another thing you can do to make people like you is help clean. Yonda explained, pointing to the cart of cleaning products they brought. People hate cleaning, so if you do it for them, they'll like you more. Okay, that makes sense. How do I clean this? Shina asked. Just use these chemicals, mop up the floor, and put all of the organs into this black bag. Yonda explained, pointing at the various supplies she'd need to clean this mess. Here I'll. Brrrr. Yonda stopped that thought when she suddenly felt her phone vibrate. She pulled out her phone and saw a text message from her man inside UA, Minetta. I have what you asked me for, the text read. Yonda grinned sinisterly. Give me 1 second, dear. I need to take this. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda walked back towards the training room, with a huge grin on her face. If nothing else, at least one thing went her way today. However, that grin then swiftly fell, the moment she saw the training room. Instead of there being puddles of blood, blood was now splattered all over the place. In fact, there somehow appeared to be more of it. In the center of the room was Shina, desperately trying to mop things up, while being covered in blood and organs. Yonda just stared at her for a while, before thinking to herself. Why does it look like there's more blood here than before? If I couldn't read minds, I'd swear she was doing this on purpose. Stop! Yonda ordered, causing Shina to freeze up. Just stop. Before you make things even worse. I'm sorry. Shina apologized tearfully. Just get over here so we can clean you up and move on to the next thing. Yonda mentally sighed. It's almost lunch, surely you can wash dishes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Crack. Yonda couldn't look anymore. But she didn't really need to either. She could tell by Shina's thoughts that she broke yet another plate. How many plates was that? The 10th. Shina shamefully admitted. Turn off the water and get down from there. Yonda ordered. Let's move on. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda had taken them to the library next, where she sat and Shina down at one of the tables and set out various papers on the desk. Now some of the people here are less smart than others, so let's test your intelligence to see if you're smart enough to help them out. Yonda explained. I've set up these tests to show how well you do in multiple subjects. Let's hope you can ace at least one of these. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Slam! Yonda slammed her head into the table, into the papers she just finished grading. And on those papers were some rather low scores. The highest being 31% and the lowest being 8%. Ah! Yonda screamed in frustration. I'm sorry. Yonda apologized tearfully. Next thing. Now, Yonda shouted. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ow wow. Shina and Yonda were now in Shiruka's room, as Shina was now attempting to knit a sock, under the supervision of Shiruka herself. It was going about as expected, as Shina had just pricked herself with the needle for the 22nd time. Shiruka winced and grabbed Shina's hands to stop her. I don't think you're cut out for knitting. Yonda face-bombed, slapping her now bruised forehead. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Otoko didn't know what he was looking at. He was just doing some panting in the art room when Shina and Yonda came in, and Yonda had Shina start painting for lack of a better word. It was more like Shina was just splattering paint all over a canvas widely, and what came out reflected that. Apparently, it was supposed to be a cat, but it was completely unrecognizable. Yonda then smashed her head against a canvas and dragged Shina out of the room. Weird. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda and Shina had returned to Shina's room, where Yonda was lying motionless on the ground, while Shina sat on the bed, looking ashamed. Shina, how is it you seem to have, and forgive me for being blunt, absolutely no talent whatsoever? Yonda asked, not removing her face from the floor. Well, I'm not used to doing things as myself. Most of the time whenever people wanted me to do anything, they wanted me to do it as Gammy. Shina explained. And when I'm Gammy, it's just so different. I'm not used to being me. Ugh, I hate that makes sense. Damn those quirkist bastards. Yonda thought to herself, before her eyes widened, as a realization suddenly came to her. I'm an idiot. I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner. Yonda picked herself up and jumped to her feet, before looking over at Shina. Shina, can't you just kill your talentlessness or something? Or turn into Gammy? Then you can do pretty much anything. Shina frowned. I don't want that. What do you mean you don't want that? Yonda screamed so loud it caused Shina to jump back against the wall of her bed. I'm sorry. Shina quickly apologized. But I don't want to use my quirk for everything. Sometimes it feels like the only thing good about me is my quirk, even though I don't really like my quirk. I want to use my own talents or just get better at things I'm not good at. Also, I don't like cutting myself. Shina looked down at the scars that littered her pale arms and legs. Her black dress covered up the scars over the rest of her body, but she could practically feel them. Yonda on the other hand was fuming. On the one hand, all of her plans had failed, and Shina was refusing to go through with the simple solution that had helped take care of this in a snap. But at the same time, she did understand where she was coming from. A lot of people just saw her as the girl who reads minds, and while she didn't really resent that, she did appreciate it when people looked at her as more than a quirk with a person attached. Ugh. Fine. I will think of some other ways you can make yourself useful, Yonda said, before pulling out her thought silencers. But first I'm going to take a nap. I hit my head too many times. Yonda placed her silencers into her ears and turned them on, before laying on the floor and falling asleep. Shina breathed a sigh of relief. Yonda was not as bad as she first thought. She was a bit mean and forceful, but she was a rather hard worker, and she seemed to have good intentions, even if the way she went about them left something to be desired. Then again, if Shina complained about that, she'd be a hypocrite. Shina laid back on her bed and wondered what she should do now. She was still grounded, and she wasn't friends with anyone here yet, so she was kind of at a loss as to what to do next. Well, one idea came to mind. Something she'd done when she'd been grounded bored before. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Ugh. Fuku groaned as she walked through the halls back to her room, utterly exhausted. First, someone had made a mess in the kitchen. Somehow they managed to set a ramen cup on fire, which was a pain to clean up. Then after she made more food, someone broke like a dozen dishes, which was even more of a pain to clean. She couldn't wait to get back into her room and relax to some anime intros. Darker than night. Deep in the woods, you'll find. Standing alone. A circus that no one knows. Master of all. Nearly 10 meters tall. Watching the show. Eyes that will slowly grow. All who perform, smile with faces torn. Fuku stopped, as suddenly, she heard some wonderful singing coming from somewhere close. That voice, it's beautiful. But, who is that? Is it one of the new girls? Despite her normally cautious nature, Fuku found herself walking towards the sound of that voice, wanting to know who was singing so wonderfully. Happy with glee. Strange as they look to me. Shall the fun start? Follow me. To the Dark Woods Circus, please. Join the festivity. It's right, here. Fuku stopped in front of one of the doors, which she realized was Shina's, and looked at it with fearful wide eyes. No, that voice can't be her, can it? Come and see the two-headed freak of nature. Gaze at a siren, her flesh deformed. Fear the blue beast and his love for cold decaying meals that once were warm. Did we ask to breathe? Did we ask to only be abused? Living in bodies like these. Suddenly the singing got louder, and even more beautiful than before, so much so that Fuku's fear was overtaken by awe. And all she could pay attention to was the song. When you look at me, what is it that you see? Now a face rotting and torn at the seams. Through the pain, I scream. How it hurts so badly. But we can't help it or do anything. As the girl would weep telling me this sadly. We perform always, the circus repeats. How I love the show. How I love it also. Can you see how fun a circus can be? As our flesh decays. And our eyes melt away. With a face rotting. It's fun every day. How I long to die. Why am I still alive? Anyone. Help me escape from this life. You can never leave. Yes, I have a feeling, long ago, someone had told this to me. The song died down into humming, and Fuku was released from the spell of the music and was able to think again. That was beautiful. Her voice is amazing. Fuku was almost in tears from not only how great the singing was, but also the lyrics. Some of which stirred inside her. Part of her wanted to give applause, but that would mean giving away the fact that she was listening in, and the last thing she wanted to do was go face to face with someone as scary as Shina. You heard my singing? Asked the imaginary Shina in Fuku's head as she held up her side, with a scary look in her eyes. Now you have to die. Nope. No, I'm good. Time to get going, Fuku. Fuku thought to herself, as she quickly and silently made her way toward her room. But, I hope she really is trustworthy, it'd be a shame for a voice that pretty to belong to someone evil.